Good evening, Demon fans, and welcome back to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and the D's have made it 3 in a row, and we're back in the 8 for the first time since 2018, and we're well placed to make a tilt towards the finals and beyond in this unprecedented 2020 season. In a moment, I'll be joined by Melbourne Football Club hardman Aaron vandenBerg to chat about his injury-riddled career and the hard work he has put into his rehab to make it back into the best 22. We'll also talk about hub life and playing in this bizarre season of compact fixturing and travelling all around the country. Later on, I'll be joined by long-time Demonlander George, and Bin Man will also be calling in to discuss our dismantling of the Magpies at the Gabba. But first, Aaron vandenBerg. Our guest tonight never takes a backward step. He's one of the hardest, toughest footballers to pull on the red and blue Guernsey. Prior to this year, he'd only amassed 35 games in 5 years and only 7 in the last 3. Fingers crossed he's put all that behind him, playing 7 and counting of our 12 games in this bizarre 2020 season. Welcome to the Demonland podcast, Aaron vandenBerg.
Thank you for having me.
Aaron,
fine introduction.
Aaron, you didn't take the usual route into the system, being drafted as a mature age rookie in 2015 from Ainsley in the NEFL. Did you ever think that your AFL dream was over after being overlooked until your early 20s?
Oh, definitely, without a doubt. I didn't have what it took to be an AFL footballer at the age of 18. Growing up on this, far south coast of New South Wales, footy is the furthest priority from a lot of people's minds. Yeah. And thankfully, I got a great opportunity to go up and play at Ainsley, and that definitely led me into the direction of what a professional footballer should do, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Your history with injuries is well documented, and I've done a deep dive on this, so bear with me here, Aaron. We're taking a painful trip down memory lane.
Yeah,
before arriving at the D's, you'd had a shoulder reconstruction. In 2015, you then played about 10 games before sustaining a hamstring injury. You got back into the side and suffered a season-ending ankle injury, which you then carried into the 2016 pre-season. You played a couple of games and then aggravated that ankle injury. Once you recovered from it, I believe you only missed one more game for the season with a hip complaint. So you'd played 28 games in your first 2 years. So far, so good. 2017, however, saw you pull up sore in one of your heels in a pre-season game. That soreness turned from a few weeks on the sidelines to missing the entire season. So all in all,
great season.
Yeah, all in all, you missed about 18 months of footy with that heel injury before rejoining the team and becoming an integral part of breaking that 12-year finals drought. So 2019 rolls around and you again pull up sore after a pre-season game with a foot injury related to the other stints on the sideline, and once again you miss the entire season. So all of our listeners would have seen your segment in the Club's To Hell and Back series documenting your rehab and eventual return to training, and obviously subsequently getting back into the team this year. With all that documented, were you ever close to giving the game away during any of those periods, and what toll, if any, does it take on your mental health?
Yeah, look, it's been really tough. I mean, ever since the end of my first year, really, I've been dealing with what's been a pretty horrific, foot and ankle injury. And even 2016, for that matter, I think I was lucky enough to get 14 games in, but they were 14 really hampered games. And it's hard enough to play AFL footy as it is, let alone, at 50, 60% of what you normally like. And I think probably early in my career, that's what weighed on me more. It wasn't the fact that I was missing a few games here and there. It was probably that I was running out there with a really bad foot. I couldn't calf raise. I couldn't do a whole host of training. I was barely getting through the week. And then to go out and try to perform at an elite level with some pretty talented individuals, it becomes pretty tough. And that certainly plays on your mind. And then, missing all of 2017 was obviously extremely difficult. And then you get some hope with 2018 and you come back and you play some good football in a good team and make a run for finals, and then that sort of reinvigorates your passion for football again. And I think if it wasn't for the fact that I played some of those games in 2018 in such a good team, I definitely would have considered, hanging up the boots and unfortunately just accepting the fact that my foot mightn't have been able to get through an AFL career. But to then go on and miss all of 2019, although it was a horrific year for the football club generally in terms of performance. That wasn't a whole lot better, and thankfully I've done a lot of off-field work with a ballet physio named Michelle Bergeron, and she's been fantastic, and so has the medical team and the coaching staff and the high performance team for that matter, in relation to guiding me through this pre-season and keeping me on a pretty monitored schedule, and thankfully I'm playing some football off the back of that, and I really hope that it starts to lead into some form and some continuity over the coming years.
2020 hasn't seen you out of the medical room either. We held our breath when we learned that you had suffered a collision injury to that problematic foot again in the pre-season, where you subsequently missed the opening and almost the only game for 2020. I suppose that the imposed break during the first wave of COVID allowed you that time to recuperate and get back onto the park?
Yeah, that was just a really unlucky injury. I mean, I stupidly ran into a fence in the pre-season trying to recover a ball and hurt my big toe. So I was leading into the start of the season pretty sore, but then unfortunately I kicked that guy against Hawthorn and just fractured my fifth metatarsal, which was completely unrelated. And yeah, unfortunately a little bit of a setback, and then COVID hit. I didn't miss any games because of it. Well, barely any anyway. The only thing was just not being able to do much in quarantine kind of sucked. But apart from that, I was pretty lucky. And, the fact that I'd pretty much run all of 2019 on the sidelines and then had a good pre-season made, my return a lot easier and quicker this year.
And as if 2020 wasn't already bad enough, you fractured your cheekbone in the Hawthorn game.
Yeah.
It's like a horror story, Aaron. You missed 2 weeks after surgery. And did you also cop a knock to your eye socket in the Adelaide game?
Yeah, I fractured. I had 4 facial fractures in that Hawthorn game, and played it out. And I didn't feel it, overly aggressively throughout the game, but we went and scanned it, and it was in quite a bad spot. And if I was to get it hit again, I could have caused some permanent eye damage. So I wasn't allowed to play, and I went and got 2 plates put in my face, and the earliest they told me was, I could play in 14 days, which happened to be the Adelaide game. And then, we were praying nothing happened, and then it was like the first 10 minutes of the game, and I've run straight into someone with that same side. And that led to 15 stitches just over where I had one of the plates. And thank God it didn't do anything further to the plates, because that would have been a disaster. I just had to run around with a sore head for the rest of the game.
Well, none of that seems to have stopped you from taking a backward step. You were involved in 2 collisions this past week. There was the collision with Brody Myercheck, and then you got cleaned up by the Weed and Darcy Moore. Your body has taken a battering this year. You clearly had eyes for the ball in the Myercheck incident. How do you get your mind back in the game after being involved in an incident like that and seeing an opponent get stretchered off?
Yeah, that was horrible. And thankfully, he's actually in the hub we're in, and he's been walking around and he's safe and he's healthy. So that was fantastic news. You don't ever want to see that, regardless of how tough you want to play the game. But yeah, I guess, you put yourself in the hole, unfortunately have that terrible collision, and then you really just got to get on to the next thing and think about, what's happening and the next stoppage, and thankfully I was able to switch my mind back into football. But then big Weeds came and he killed me on the bench, and that hurt me a lot more than the Myercheck collision did. So
it looked pretty
I still haven't forgiven him for that. I'm not talking to him at the moment, but Bailey Fritsch swears it was my ball, so I'll listen to Bailey.
Yeah, when I saw it, it was your ball. Usually they've got to call you back. That's what I was taught in juniors.
Yeah, exactly.
Darren Burgess has obviously been a big asset to the club and the team in terms of our fitness and ability to run out games. How has he shaped your preparation for games and keeping you fit and on the park?
Yeah, I can't discount the help that Phil Merriman's given me either. He's working in tandem with Darren. And the 2 of them have been really good in terms of, I only train once a week, and then I try to do my top-up stuff through, bikes and other forms of fitness, because the foot at the moment just can't maintain the sort of training schedule that the other boys do. And they've been really transparent with me. They're really looking after me. At the end of games, if we're fortunate to be in front. I'm getting rested so that I'm not getting any extra Ks into my legs, into my foot. And, I can't thank them enough for the way they've treated me through this time. And then I'm hoping that, if I can get through this year unscathed, that's just going to lead into a good, well-balanced pre-season and hopefully a 2021 season too. But they've been great. I'm very thankful that they're both leading me in the right direction along with the medical team.
Your hardness and ability to get the contested ball and your ferocious chase down tackles have earned you a bit of a cult following amongst the fans.
That's nice.
A lot of that was cemented in your comeback games in 2018 in the lead up and through the finals of that year. How was that experience of playing finals footy at the G to overwhelmingly Demon-dominated crowds?
Oh, it was immense. It was funny enough, we were literally just talking about it 20 minutes ago in the physio room about your favourite footballing moment. I think mine was in 2018 at that three-quarter time break when the siren went and we were about to walk back out onto the park and the crowd was just going nuts. And I think there must have been nearly 70,000 of the 100,000 people in Demons colours, and that's a memory that I'll never forget. And I'm going to try extremely hard, as I know the rest of the team will, to get that moment back again. Yeah. Because once you get a taste for that, you want it again. And bringing the joy to the fans and what it meant to them was immense. And you'd hope that we can do that in the coming years.
2020 has certainly been a different beast altogether, going from playing in front of 85,000 people to playing in front of an empty stadium must have been surreal. Can you describe to us fans who could only witness it on TV what that sort of felt like when you compare it to what you're running out after three-quarter time in a final?
Yeah, it's a different one. You're certainly trying to find your own motivation because you don't have the crowd behind you. You definitely don't feel the confidence swings in games that crowds can bring. When you kick a quick couple and you've got the crowd on your side, that often can be enough to spur you on to put a team away. But I think, you're definitely trying to generate your own energy out there, and it's a very training-like feeling sometimes when you're screaming on the ground and you can hear your own voice echoing through the stadium. Which doesn't usually happen. But, fortunately, we've up here in Queensland, we've been having sort of 5,000 and 6,000 people crowds, and that's actually enough to create a little bit of atmosphere. Yeah. So it's nice for those who get to come along. But, unfortunately, it's not going to be, I can't imagine anything's going to change in 2020, and we're going to have to keep continuing to try and generate a bit of energy and a bit of confidence in ourselves.
How have you been enjoying the hub life? That also must be a unique experience for the players as individuals and as a team, having to have regular COVID tests, your temperature taken daily, spending every waking moment with your teammates, breakfast, lunch, dinner. It's certainly got to be a different experience than what you used to back in Melbourne.
Yeah, very, very different. It's got a very pre-season camp feel to it, where you're just constantly with one another. But maybe the first couple of weeks we were probably in each other's pockets a little bit too much, and then as the hub life has gone on, we've worked out ways to sort of generate a bit of free time for ourselves, which has been probably needed. But it's been really good, and honestly, you can't complain when you see what's going down in Victoria at the moment. We probably were a little bit adverse to going to a hub at first, but then when you see people getting quite sick and Melbourne going into stage 4 restrictions, it certainly sinks in that you've got it pretty good up here. So make the best of it while we can and try and get the results that we need and come home with wins.
I know that some of the players have family with them, their partners and kids, but I imagine that a lot of the younger players and they don't, and you don't need to go into specifics of your own situation, but I imagine it's tough for those who are sort of away from their loved ones at this time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, thankfully, there's a lot of people who have been able to get their kids and their wives up. I don't have a wife or kids, so I can't really speak on their behalf. But I know that there was a lot initially that didn't have them up here at the start, and they were definitely doing it tough. And as it's gone on and more people have quarantined and come up, you're just seeing the joy that the families bring to those people. So it's great to have them up and around now. And then, as for a few of us that have got partners and whatnot down in Melbourne, I'm sure that it's difficult, but again, it's one of those ones you've got to sacrifice and do it for the right reasons, and then hopefully we get to enjoy what's a good season do that with family when we get back.
Absolutely. The compressed season, playing off 4 or 5 day breaks, consistently travelling to other states, the long bus rides to and from the hub, the airport, and the ground. It's certainly a unique situation. How have the footy department and the team prepared for this, and how are you and your body handling it?
It's been very bizarre. I don't think there's been one game yet that's had the same preparation. So we're constantly trying to adjust on the fly and try to improve every week. Now we're starting to go to places the night before and stay in a hotel, or actually get to a hotel 4 or 5 hours before a game and try to make the first few hours leading into the game normal. And that seems to be working really well for us. And then as for the 4 and 5 day breaks, I don't even train during the week, so I can't see how it must be for some of the other boys that have to get up and run. But thankfully, I'm not doing a lot, and then just going game to game really, and hoping that we get fresh and get a result.
The boys who haven't cracked it into the seniors yet, they're playing in truly bizarre matches in order to stay fit and get some type of match simulation in. We've seen 12 on 12, 16 on 16. We've seen amalgamated teams of up to 3 different sides playing. You played in a 14 on 14 match in round 2 against Carlton. What was that experience like as opposed to the regular Casey games?
Lots of running. There's a lot of space, I can tell you that. Playing the 14 on 14 was actually quite a lot of fun. We had a very good team in that day, and there was just a paddock of space. So it was just uncontested possession after uncontested possession, something I'm not really accustomed to. So I was enjoying my time right there. The guys have been absolutely fantastic. The young boys and the people that are unfortunate, to miss out on the AFL team have been going back, and the attitude's been tremendous, and so has every other club for that matter, adapting to it and pulling on a different team's Guernsey and playing with one another. And I think it's just, we're all walking around a hub together, we're all playing, strange second games together. It's just kind of everyone's smiling and, a bit quirky at what the hell's going on, but we're all getting through and doing a very good job of it.
Who's your smoky to be the next in line to crack it into the team?
Oh, that's a good question. I really want to see Josh Wagner get a game. I think he's a fantastic player, and he brings a real toughness and one-on-one defence to us down back, and I'm hoping that he'll be, able to crack a game. And I'm trying to think who mightn't have had, and JJ is probably the other one. He hasn't played a game yet, and he's been doing a lot right. And you never know what will happen with these 4 and 5 day breaks. Unfortunately, injuries come, but also players might get rested. If he's fortunate enough to get a game, I think he'll do a fantastic job. So it'd be really great for him to get a game in.
Yeah, a lot of the fans have sort of earmarked him as being one of the next ones they want to see. Aaron, before I let you go, there's been a lot said about this unprecedented year. There were doubts that we'd even be playing any footy, and there's been those who want to label this year and whoever wins it with an asterisk. I heard Tommy Mack interviewed earlier in the year strongly disagreeing with this, stating, and I paraphrase here, that given what you guys have gone through to get through the year, that it just will make it all the more tougher and rewarding to win it. Is that your feeling too?
Definitely. I will not lie that when I first thought about this year and what might become of it, I thought, is the integrity of the game there? But given all the games are the same length, everyone's in very similar conditions, this has never been tougher. That's without a shadow of a doubt. And I think that whatever team's lucky enough to get through the season and win this premiership certainly won't be looking at it like an asterisk. I know I certainly won't. This has been bloody hard, and if we're to win, I'll be, ecstatic.
We will be too. Thank you, Aaron, for your time today. I really appreciate you having a chat with us, and we're right in the mix to take our shot at finals, and hopefully we can all be celebrating from home, watching you guys hold up the cup in that one day in October.
Let's hope so. I'd love for that to happen. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Aaron. That was Aaron vandenBerg. Thank you to the Melbourne Football Club, and thank you to Aaron for his generous time that he's given us tonight. Joining me now is long-time Demon Lander George. Good evening, George. How are you?
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, everyone. What a great week has been to be a Demon supporter. The only thing missing, I think, was some vision of Eddie Maguire going purple in the stands as he watched his team being ripped apart this week. So a good week for all of us.
I'm assuming Eddie wasn't at the game because we didn't get any vision of him, and they always love to go to Eddie when he's at the MCG. I'm assuming he's not up in the hub. So we were unfortunate not to get some vision of him having an aneurysm in the stands. Also joining us tonight as a caller, as we still try to appease the Norm Smith curse, long-time caller to the show, Bin Man. Good evening, Bin Man. How are you?
Good, thanks. Good evening, Demon Landers. And I reckon it was Eddie would have been great on that little fan thing that they have when they flash after a goal, but instead of flashing to the Melbourne fans after a Melbourne goal, just flash to a picture of him at home in front of his Zoom after each one of our goals. That would have been... I would have paid extra subscription for that opportunity.
Your KO should have had a separate channel for that. I would have paid for that too. Yeah, I didn't think about the fan cam. That would have been nice to see Eddie on there. Well, boys, let's get straight into talking about that. Just after the game, it was like 10 days prior to the game on Saturday. We were sitting 3 and 5 with an 88%, and now we're 6 and 5 with 118%. We're back in the 8. It's what a time to be alive, besides the fact that we're living in a worldwide pandemic locked in our houses. Great time to be alive.
It was a fantastic performance, wasn't it? I watched the replay, and it was one of those rare sort of occasions when you watch the replay, and I thought we played better on the replay than we did live, and I think I was a little bit... Collingwood were a lot better than I thought they were, and there's certainly a lot better pressure. So it was a really meritorious win. They kept working right through that game, and so did Collingwood. All credit to them as well. So, it was a terrific win.
Yeah, I was going to play devil's advocate. I've sort of played it every week so far when we've talked about our opposition. They were 2 down on the bench. They were coming off the 4-day break. They had some great players missing from their team. But having said that, we did most of our damage in the first half before that lack of rotations or the matchups due to the injuries or their short break could take effect. We didn't junk time, kick all those goals in junk time like some of the detractors might have said about our matches in the previous 2 weeks. We put them to the sword early and were very damaging from the beginning, and I thought, we answered every goal that they kicked. And I think that was important. And, a 10-goal drubbing of the old enemy is fantastic under any circumstances. You agree with that, George?
Absolutely, Andy. I think the important thing from this game, in a similar manner to the North and the Adelaide games, was this was a game that we had to win, and had to win convincingly, given Collingwood's situation. Once again, if we'd just fallen over the line with them missing so many players and off a 4-day break, people would have questioned it. We won convincingly, and that's exactly what we needed to do. And in a similar manner, the coming games against the Bulldogs and St Kilda have to be measured in the same way. These are the games that we have to win. There's no question if we are going to be serious about being there at finals time, so we were successful in the previous 3 games. Let's see how we go in the next 2.
Let's talk about our midfield balance first off. I think we finally got the midfield balance right. Last week we discussed what Brayshaw's role would be with Viney coming back into the team and whether the two of them could play midfield together. Here are the midfield attendances for the night. Oliver had 20. Brayshaw had 19, Jack Viney had 19, Petraka 16, and Tom Sparrow had 6. I think Vanders might have also gone into the middle a few times, but I don't have stats for that. Just another thing, just on Angus Brayshaw, his centre attendances between round 1 and round 9 were 10.4 was the average of centre bounce attendances. round 10, 15, round 11, 19, round 12, 19. And just in the last half of 2018, when Brayshaw was playing like his best footy, he averaged 20-plus centre attendances. So, yeah, it's big man, I'll throw it to you. What do you think of the midfield balance, and what did you see with sort of the Viney-Brayshaw dynamic?
So did you say how many Track had?
Track had 16, because he played a bit in the forward 16. Line.
Yeah, 16, so but still not far off the 2021 Viney.
Yeah.
I thought the balance was terrific, and I mean, we've been banging on about it, haven't we? But Brayshaw he looks so much better in the middle, and he gets a lot more value for his possessions because they're out of his packs and he's moving forward out of them, and he's really, he's quite good with his hands as well. I thought the balance was great. It's really, again, we've talked about it, but it's really hard to work out where they are on the ground at different times, and it's no mean feat to sort of have Viney and Brayshaw similar numbers. I think Swallow, must be quite down on what he had in the Adelaide game. I presume he was up around 10 or 12 in the Adelaide game, so he was all over the place. Swallow, he was in the forward line, back line. It was a classic utility role, but it seemed to work really well in terms of the mix. And I wonder whether part of that might have been not having Max in might help with that mix. And I'm not suggesting that we were better because Max wasn't in, but Viney, for instance, rose so well to Gawn, and that connection is so clear that perhaps that that becomes a pattern.
George?
Yeah, I think for Vinderman's reference, we'll just have to start calling a sparrow the bird, so that we can go through all sorts of different genuses of feathered friends. Look, I think the club, the coaching staff really got the mix right this week in order to get Brayshaw more midfield time, which was obviously very beneficial to us. I think they trimmed Viney down a bit and they trimmed Petrarca down a bit. Now, that's been pretty hard given Petrarca's dominance in games, but they certainly got the mix really right this game, and we saw the benefits come from all of them still, but it also gave Brayshaw that extra time, and he really blossomed in the middle. So it was just lovely to watch. Let's see that continue.
Some of the individual efforts. This is provided by the Melbourne Football Club on their website. Petrarca, 15 contested possessions, which was game high. 8 loose ball gets, a game high. Also game high, 505 metres gained, and that's from Petrarca, so that's fantastic. And again, score involvement 7, which was also a game high. Oliver, 8 clearances was game high. 5 centre clearances, and Viney, this is a great one, pressure acts 32, and that, that's what Viney brings to the game. It's just some really, really nice stats that you like to see.
And it was interesting, wasn't it, that Collingwood still did us in the clearances and supposedly had won the around the ground, but we just handled the ball and used it so much better than what they did. It really was chalk and cheese. Adams was probably the most prolific of the opposition mids, but the rest of them really didn't do all that much, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's early on they were for sure they were well on top of us in the clearances. I think we sort of evened it up a little bit towards the end, but as you said, it was just a testament to the pressure of our mids because we really nullified their effectiveness. We made them hurry their kicks. With a guy like Viney on your tail with those 32 pressure acts. We really did nullify them. Big man, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, it was interesting because I had no question that the 4-day break is a massive negative on teams. Every team who's had the 4-day break has struggled. I think there's only been a couple of games where the team with 4-day break has won, Port being one of them, but they struggled in that game as well. They weren't up and about the way they normally are, and so that was definitely an issue. But having said that, the stats were remarkable in terms of Collingwood. I thought they came out, they were mentally there, but they were definitely fatigued. There's no question. Grundy looked out on his feet. And I think, one of my favourite players in the league, Pendlebury, he's just a terrific player. And George, I'm not sure if you know, but he played a bit of basketball too. Pendlebury, he's got so much space. But he looked off his game as well. Not, he's still important. But some of the stats were remarkable. They had one more inside 50. They matched us pretty much in disposals. They matched us in contested ball. They had clearances. They beat us by 32-31. Centre clearances 13-12. Stoppage clearances were 19 apiece. Uncontested possessions, we only had 8 more than them, and they had 2 more contested possessions. 68 turnovers to 70. On paper, that's a pretty close game of football, isn't it? In that third quarter, when they came out, they had 16 inside 50s to our 9 in that quarter. Wow. And I don't know what the pressure gauge on Fox measures, to be honest, but they bang on about it all the time, and that must have been their big investment in the summer. But it was in the elite category in that all of that third quarter. So they really worked hard in that game, and it was a testament to how well we played that they never looked like bridging that gap once we got 3 goals in front.
Let's talk about some more individuals. We'll go to Spargo first. He's really taken his opportunity well to cement his place as a small forward in the team. Reads the ball really well coming into the forward line and always seems to be in the right place and take his chances. 3 second quarter goals iced the match early. It was reminiscent of his cameo in the 2018 semi-final. Everything Charlie did in that second quarter is exactly sort of what I want, Cozzy to do. I feel sometimes Cozzy's not always in the right position, and he'll probably, as he plays more, he'll learn that. But Spargo really cemented that spot in the team. That's that's for sure. George?
Yeah, I totally agree. Again, cemented is the word that I would use as well. Spargo, I really like because he's a natural footballer. Comes from a long family history of football players, so it's not surprising. But he just knows how to get to the right spot at the right time all the time. He's obviously not a big player, and he's not a quick player in the same way that Pickett is, but he uses every opportunity to absolutely maximise his value, and those 3 goals in the 10 minutes just blew the game away. It was just something to watch, and I think we've found the opposite forward pocket if anybody plays forward pocket these days. So we've got two exciting players filling those holes in the forward line, and that's exactly what we were looking for, particularly last year and maybe even the year before.
Big man, are you on the Spargo train?
Yeah, he's terrific, isn't he? In the way he's been playing the last couple of weeks. There's an interview he had after the game, which was quite interesting. It was a good interview, and I'm a really big rap for that young Ben Gibson. He's brought a lot to the club in terms of his media stuff, I think. But yeah, he was talking about the fact that he'd been told he needed to work on aspects of his game, staying in game, staying focused, not dropping off, working on the defensive stuff, and he's gone away and it looks like he's worked on it. And as George notes, he's a natural footballer, and that goal he roved. If you watch the replay of that again, he hits that pack, or he hits that crumb, he takes it on the full from, I think from maybe it was Tom McDonald, not marking, but it was just a beautiful crumb. Absolutely. He hit the pack at pace, grabbed the ball and went straight towards goal. And then the goal he kicked, I think it was immediately after, from the next centre clearance, where he almost marked the ball and got himself on his right foot to swing it around. It was also a really crafty goal. And the other thing, as I said last week, that I like about him is he's reliable with his kicking. He doesn't go for too much. He's a bit, like I said last week, he's a bit like Caleb Daniels, in that he hits those 30-metre targets pretty reliably. That's just so critical that your scoring chains don't break down.
It was interesting. Sorry, Andy. It was interesting as well in that interview with him, where he said he'd been working with the Sykes to get himself into a game day mindset. So I just thought that was really interesting, given we're seeing other teams, having deep breathing sessions at breaks and things like that. And whatever works, it's obviously working well with Charlie, so keep doing it.
Exactly. We'll move on to the big Braden Pruce. When you go into a match against a dual All-Australian ruckman without your own dual Australian ruckman, you're always going to be a bit nervous. And then when you throw Big Prucey into the mix, coming back into the team with very little game time on the back of injuries in the pre-season and during the season, in addition to there not being a proper reserves competition, it makes that prospect all the more daunting. I thought Prucey held his own really well. He didn't disgrace himself in the hit-out differential between the two. He took some good marks around the ground and competed, gave off handballs from marks to better kicks in the team, and even took the game on at one point when he ran with the ball and kicked a monster kick that T-Mac probably should have marked. The ball fell to the ground and Melksham socked it in through for a goal. I was happy with his game because I was a bit nervous about it. We were going against Grundy. So, big man, Big Prucey, did he get your tick of approval this week? And are you less nervous about going into sort of the next week if we don't have Max Gawn?
Oh, absolutely. He was terrific. He was. He looked in ripping nick as well. I think I heard the commentators say that he was cramping up near the end, which would be no surprise, given I think it was pretty muggy up there. But he looked in great nick, and he looked not as skinny as he did in the pre-season, but not as heavy as he did last year. So I thought he was manful right through the game and made every contest a difficult one for Grundy, as I said. And Grundy he didn't look, his normal athletic self. And I think Bruce played on it. It's quite clever. He did what they do to the Gawn. He looked to not hit him, but he certainly made him work. And geez, he can roost the ball, can't he? He set up 2 goals, the one to Tom McDonald and another one deep to the square with a 60-metre bomb into the goal square. He can really roost that ball.
You did mention that they said he was cramming up. There was quite a chunk of time when he was off the ground. I think so. I didn't look, the AFL site does tell you when a player's injured, and I remember reading in the game day thread that someone said that app did say that he was injured, and I was really worried then because that's even more daunting going into the next week and Maxi might not be playing. But then he did come back on the ground, but you could see he did look like he was limping a bit, which might have been, hopefully, is just cramps. George, do you have anything to add about Prucey or any more?
No, he was fantastic again. He did exactly what he needed to do. He was well backed up by Tommy Mack in the ruck as well, which was important. And that basically, I think what they were doing was matching Grundy's time off the ground. Collingwood weren't trying to run him into the ground because they knew he wasn't in great shape after the 4-day break. So whenever Grundy came off, Bruce came off as well, which was, Grundy's worst nightmare was coming up against him in every ruck contest. But more importantly, I think one of the Demonland posters showed Grundy trying to get out the back for some cheap kicks, and Bruce was not allowing any of that. He was involved in the play up the ground so that he ensured that the ball never got to Grundy out the back. So, Brucey was doing very well. If Max isn't available this week, I think we've got a very good option in Bruce coming up against Tim English, who is one of the rising stars in the rucking arena. I think we'll be talking about English in the next 2 to 3 years as one of the top 3 ruckmen in the field. But he's still only relatively young, and he did an ankle this week, so there's a question about whether he'll front up. Bruce is exactly the sort of person we need. And if there's any question whatsoever about Max, then I think we need to see Brucey and to double up. The following week, we're going to come up against Ryder and Marshall from St Kilda, and I reckon Max is going to need some help in that because both of those are playing very good football at the moment. They're both seriously good ruckmen, so we may well need to take 2 into that game, not 1 and a backup.
Yeah, that's going to be an important game for us, one of those 8-point games, big man, that you love us talking about.
Yeah. We got our 24 points, so we should be right for the finals. Just on Bruce, a couple of things is, one, exactly right, George, that, I think English would probably we prefer Max to play against him, because Bruce will, a fired up Bruce in his second game fresh. It's probably not the fella you want running through you all day in contests. But there was another stat that I saw on the Melbourne side in the Stats That Matter tag, about a metres gained from midfield ball up and throw-ins. We're 817 metres gained, and Collingwood were 337 metres.
Wow.
So, again, I'm not entirely sure how they measure that, but if it's just literally from what it says, that would indicate that whilst they won the clearances and the hit-out, we won the midfield battles from the ball-ups and throw-ins, and more than doubling their metre gain. So it probably says something about how well Bruce and Tommy Mack, as George noted, actually went in them as rucks.
Moving on, Langdon, I've said it the last couple of weeks, one of the recruits of the year, not just for the Ds, but I think in the AFL. We've spoken about this almost every week, and it definitely deserves repeating. We were desperate for that outside run and carry, and this guy just runs his guts out all night. He creates that extra space for himself. And finally, this week he topped it off with 2 goals. And the first goal that he kicked was something that I've been praying for a Melbourne player to do. From 40 metres out, kicking a snap that goes in almost post high. We always seem to have snaps falling short or going wayward. So, loved his game again this week.
Yeah, he's a terrific runner, isn't he? And he's got a knack of running along the boundary line and really cutting it fine. A couple of times he went out there, and but he, there was some discussion on Demonland about width, and he uses every centimetre of turf on the footy ground, and I love how much he seems to be enjoying his footy. And we talked about it last week with Oliver and others. They all seem to be enjoying himself at the moment. I guess it's much easier to enjoy yourself when you're winning, but he looks like he enjoys his footy a lot, and he's just been a terrific pickup for the Ds.
George?
He's fantastic, isn't he? He just runs all day, and I think as the season's progressed, the other players are starting to realise that he's the safety valve out the back when you're in real trouble. Langdon will always be there for you. So, he's exactly what we needed. So fantastic, probably one of the best recruits that we may well have added to the club for this season. That certainly.
Are you guys worried that other teams might start minding him a little bit more closely? You don't really hear of wingmen being tagged, but is that a possibility, Bin Man?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, I think it was really interesting, that discussion last week about George's point about sacrificing a player or harms on side bottom, and the way that could muck around with your midfield minutes. I mean, if they put harms on harms on side bottom, we talked earlier about how well they did the midfield rotation. Well, that would have all been thrown out. Similarly, how would you go running a player on Langdon? He's basically effectively out of the game. But the other thing is, how many players in the AFL have the tank to go with him for a whole game? And if they do, you want them as an offensive player, not a defensive player.
Exactly.
You'd have to put an Andrew Gaff or a who's the one from St Kilda, Brad Hill. They're about the only ones I can think of off the top of my head who are capable of running back and forth all match. And as we said before, you prepared to sacrifice someone to do that? Probably not. So,
well, yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. If it takes a Gaff out of the game or a Brad Hill out of the game, well, by all means, go ahead and do it.
It's a similar dilemma for teams with a different dilemma, but similar with Petrarca. I mean, he's just unstoppable. Even if you tagged him, how useful would it be? He would still get his hands on his share of the footy. You'd have to literally block him from a contest, and hopefully he'd get his share of free kicks. But he's our most damaging player at the moment. There's no question. Oliver's not far behind, but you couldn't really tag him. He's just too powerful.
Bailey Fritsch. I thought he had a really good game. He was up and down that wing, hunting the ball, taking strong overhead marks in the wet, and delivering accurately into the forward line. And also worth noting is his hard running to get back down forward when needed, and he's ended up kicking 2 goals. I really enjoyed Bailey's game. George?
Yeah, totally agree. Again, he's really, really good overhead.
Yeah.
And so I think the club's been moving him further and further down towards the wings to provide that link man role to get the ball in. And when he does it as well, he delivers so cleanly into the forward line and creates those opportunities that we need. I'm still not sold totally on his set shot kicking.
Yeah, I don't think he is either. You can tell.
Yeah, but while he's putting him through the middle, we'll take that. But I think he drops the ball a little bit too much on its end. But hopefully coaches can fix that sort of thing. But yeah, he's a great contributor to us at the moment.
Big man. Anything else on Bailey?
Yeah, he's. Just to echo George's comments about his hands, he's a beautiful marker and he positions himself so well with the ball in flight. And he's just a very natural footballer. And I thought he was really important in that third quarter. I didn't really notice it live. I've noticed it more on the replay, as you say, Andy. He worked super hard up and down the ground in that third quarter, and that was a critical quarter in terms of making sure we didn't give them a chance to get back into the game. And as I said earlier, they pushed hard. And whilst he wasn't scoring goals and he didn't have a huge amount of possessions, he was working hard up and down that wing. And in the last quarter was, maybe it was the third, he got that goal that was basically on the end of hard running, where he snapped it on his right foot, I think. So, yeah, I thought he's been really strong in the last 3-4 weeks.
Just before we go on, we'll talk about the forward line in a sec. I just want to mention, if you do want to call the show, 03 9016 3666. That's 03 9016 3666, or Skype us on Demonland31. Our forward line worked really well all night. Wiedemann clunking marks and kicking 2 goals. Melksham played one of his best games for the year, and he really made his opponent Maynard play accountable footy, and usually Maynard's a bit of a playmaker, sort of intercepting and sort of playing his own game off half back, and Melksham didn't allow him to do that. The Melkers, he's kicked 2 goals and almost had a third ripper that Wiedemann marked on the line. George, you had been critical earlier in the year of Melksham. Are you happy with what you saw on Saturday?
Certainly happier. I saw him for the first time actually try and attempt a contested mark. So that's an improvement from what I've been watching before. But it's always, when people are kicking goals, everybody looks good. I think the important thing with the forward line is that in a similar way to the back line, when Spargo goes in there, we've got Kickett in there now, Wiedemann's cementing the spot at full forward. Melksham and Fritsch playing the flanks beautifully. We've just starting to get some cohesion between them. They're starting to play with each other and they know where to play. Tommy Mack sort of filling that role a bit further up the ground and doubling up as the ruck. But the forward line is starting to look like a more cemented forward line in total. So, things are coming along very nicely in there. I'm still a little bit worried about Wiedemann in the sense that he kicks all his goals early in the game and then disappears. Last week, I think they threw Tarrant on him, and this week I suspect they threw Moore back on him, which probably hindered him to a certain extent. But it was also really advantageous because Moore was and has been the driver of Collingwood's attacks out of the back line. He intercepts the ball and then runs and kicks it deep into the up the field. But while he's been forced to go back and mind Wiedemann, because Dunn was completely and utterly incapable of doing that, that took away basically all Collingwood's forward thrust. So Yeah, he's doing well. He's kicking the goals. You can't complain anymore about that. What more can we want from the forward line at the moment that beats Collingwood by 10 goals?
Exactly. What did you guys think of T-Mac's game? Didn't take the overhead marks that he usually does, but in 2 cases he did get the ball to the ground, which directly resulted in goals to Melksham and Spargo. Big man, what's his role? We don't have Jackson there, and what's his role once Gawn comes back into the team? Is he still in there, to provide that relief ruck and that extra tall up forward?
I don't think we have much choice. We have to play. I think there's one thing that we've learnt this season is that 3 forwards don't work. No. 1 forward doesn't work. No forwards don't work. 2's the right number. I thought he was, I was critical of him. I haven't been critical of his ability, but for me, he's been his lack of mobility has to be related to either injury or he's carrying weight, and I suspect that's related to fitness and injury because he's a hard worker, and his time trials were way off this year. Compared, he's normally number 1, number 2 at time trials. I think he was down this year. So playing him in games and in rucking is probably a great way to get some match fitness to him. I don't think we've got a great deal of choices in. And my criticism of his mobility aside, I thought he worked hard in this game and in the last game too. But there was one, I think it might have even been the goal that Spargo kicked, roving the pack, where he got a tackle up the ground and doubled back and just still got into the marking contest and brought the ball to the ground. He's not snagging him, but that he worked hard. So he's definitely in the side now without Jackson, and it's a bit of a worry, but I can't see probably Jackson them taking a risk. I wouldn't have thought, given a shortened season, and he stays in.
I thought Cozzy was a little bit fumbly the other night. He just couldn't get clean possession. I still think he's on the verge of breaking a game apart. He's got to get more into the right position. He seems to have a good tank for a first-year player. George, Cozzy, we still keep persisting?
He's got a lot of learning to do, but just as equally, I'll give him some credits in this game. It was surprisingly wet. I don't know whether anybody noticed, even in the first half, when Myercheck was taken off the ground, the ambulance trolley or whatever that little golf cart is, the wheels on that were wet as it was coming off and on the ground. So it would have been slippery across the whole ground before it even poured down in the third quarter. So for players like Cozzy who depend on clean ball movement, it would have made his life a little bit more difficult. We're yet to see the best of him, and given the conditions, I've got no questions about where he's going. He's going to be a great player for us, and he scares the hell out of the opposition when he's around, which is something that we've been missing for years. So they just don't know where he's going to come from. So he's fantastic. I hope we see a lot more of him.
Our back line. Lever made a couple of big errors, I thought. I'm still not sold on Halves as a defender. I think he too made a few errors. But the back six as a whole held up really well. It's important to note that they had one more inside 50 than us, but we scored 10 more goals than they did, which is a testament to our back line, led by Stephen May. I think Hibbert and Salem continuing to have great years rebounding out of the back line. Salem had game high 10 marks and has had 22 disposals at a staggering 96% efficiency. That's a fantastic stat. Hibbert a game high 9 intercept possessions. So the back line really purring. Binman?
Couple of notables in there. I thought Hibbert's just been fantastic for the last 4 weeks, and in some ways a bit of an unsung hero. He looks like he's dropped some weight. He's quick, and he's playing like a man possessed, getting back a number of times into contests, and he must have done 3 4 times this season where he saved a goal on the line through sheer desperation, touching it before it would go through for a goal. He's just been brilliant, and also he's back to getting that penetration on his kicking. I like May down deep. He's been playing deeper, and I think with Tomlinson in, he struggles deep, as I talked about last week, and he's much better up on that half-back flank where he's closer to the sort of winger that he probably is his best spot. But May looks great sort of on that last line, and he's been really, or hasn't he? Lever was okay. I mean, it's easy to sort of point out those mistakes. I reckon his moustache doesn't help. So when he kicks the ball from 30 metres out deliberately, I just see his moustache and then think, shave it off, buddy. So Harms, I think one of the things that I find challenging is you don't know how much running they do defensively, and someone noted that about Tomlinson, and because you just don't see that wide shot. So some of those players work hard with the ball when the ball's not in their hand, so it's hard to sort of tell how hard they work. The other one player I love down there, and we've talked about him a few times, is Lockhart. I love his energy. I love the way he goes about his footy, and he's another one that puts the fear of God in opposition players.
George, anything you want to add about the back line?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I think it's too easy to overlook the fact that finally we have got a backline together that's starting to play together for long periods of time. We've had Lever, May, Hibbert and Salem, apart from Hibbert, I think missed the second game. They've all played all together now in every game of the season. Lockhart has complemented it beautifully, and I suspect Nev Jetta is going to find it very, very hard to get back into the side because of Lockhart. Once again, Lockhart's just a natural footballer who just gets to the right spot at the right time and covers off those small forwards very, very well. But yeah, on Tomlinson, I think, as Ben mentioned, because you don't see what's happening around the game up and down the wings without wide shots, I think Tomlinson was doing a lot more work, and I think he was assigned Will Hoskin-Elliott, who only scored that one goal when nobody seemed to go for the ball just outside the goal square. But Hoskin-Elliott's usually a far, far bigger contributor in the game than he was allowed to in this one. And I don't think Tomlinson was actually on the ground when he kicked that goal. So it's one of those acts that one of those players in this game that you just don't notice what he's doing simply because we can't see it. But when a player like Hoskin-Elliott has such a poor output for the whole game, then something must have been done, I think, unbeknownst to us. But the best part is these guys are all playing together and they're playing their best football for a long time. Salem and Hibbert, as Binman has mentioned, it's just the consistency with the accurate kicking that's coming out of that half-back lines, just setting everything up beautifully for the guys up forward, which is exactly what we've been missing for the last couple of years.
And I don't know whether I'd love to know their sort of thinking around maybe, because to my eye, it looks like he's a bit sort of heavier and more muscly. And remember last year they were talking about, he was talking about the fact that when he came to Melbourne, they asked him to trim down to play a higher sort of half-back running role. It feels like to me he's playing deeper now and maybe not quite so sort of much of a running role, which to my way of thinking suits him more. And he's almost looks like the traditional fullback at the moment, and he's been really consistent, and it's just great to have a player down there that you can just rely on who's going to halve a contest and take his share of marks. And he's also his kicking, as I think George noted, if he gets going early, he's generally pretty good. He was great in this game.
Mm.
vandenBerg, who we just spoke to earlier, a much better game this week. I think some people underestimate the hardness that he adds to the team. Really sets the tone for his teammates with all those hard acts. He really does put the fear of God into the opposition. Twice he put his body on the line with only eyes for the ball. Obviously, the result of the Myercheck collision was hard to watch, but once again, he had eyes only for the ball, and and then later on, he's bounce back into a marking contest and Weed and more have come straight. He doesn't flinch. I was happy. I just love the hardness that he brings to the team, and not just because I spoke to him just earlier on. Wrapped with his game.
It was incredible listening to him speak before when you were sort of highlighting all the injuries that he's had over this period of time. I find it incredible that he'd be even approaching a contest like he did in that Myercheck one with the just one-track mindedness that he has. I'd be taking a short step, quite frankly, but he doesn't. He just keeps on going, and like I said, it just terrifies the opposition knowing that he's around. And all successful sides through the years have always had some player who the opposition looking over their shoulders just in case he's around, and vandenBerg's our man in this role.
Yeah, go ahead, big man.
Sorry, Andy.
Yeah, you go ahead.
I was just going to say that just while I think of it, was a fantastic interview, really terrific, and it was sort of shocking to hear actually how serious his foot injury was and how close he was to giving it away, and also pretty shocking to hear what risk he took in that Adelaide game with that second hit in his plates around the potential damage to his eye, and just you think. That hit on Myercheck was just sickening to watch, and it's a tough game of footy, and all three of us have watched footy for a long time, and I don't think it's ever been more frighteningly sort of ballistic. It's such a that hit was just incredible. All three players, Reid, him, and Myercheck, were just all eyes for the ball. So I watched the AFL Stats Pro just before coming on tonight. Of his involvements in the game, and the stats just don't do him justice. When you watch just his involvements, it went for about 7 minutes. He had about 20 involvements, 16 involvements, and as you say, he just does so much work off the ball, so much work around, and I think that if he can start kicking a couple of goals, he'll not only be that sort of physical player that every team needs, as you say, but also a damaging player up forward. He kicked a few goals in 2018 from memory in those finals, so that'll just add another level to his game.
Our last quarters and last halves, shout out to Darren Burgess and the fitness team. We're really running away with games, particularly in the last 3 weeks. This is going to be important coming into the next lot of condensed fixturing. Our last 3 games have seen us score 15-9 to 1-2 in the last quarters, I believe. And taking it back another quarter, our last halves have produced 23 goals, 13, 151 to 3 goals, 11, 29. So that's scoring 20 goals more than our opposition over the last 3 weeks in the last half. That's just fantastic. I mean, look, 2 of those teams were the bottom teams, but you can only beat who's been put in front of you. George, pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's very impressive, even though it is against teams which are, pretty lowly this year. And Collingwood was certainly off a 4-day break, and they were completely and utterly shocked by the end of the game. But I can certainly vouch that Melbourne teams in previous years wouldn't have done that. So it's very pleasing to see that they're running the games out. They don't care about what the score is. They're just going to keep on scoring until that final bell goes. So just fantastic to watch. Very pleasing for the supporters. It'll be interesting now that we're coming up against a couple of similarly placed clubs in the next 2 weeks. Whether this continues, we'll really know whether it's just purely fitness or whether it's because the opposition had all that flash. But we'll certainly get that opportunity firstly this week.
But another thing to add to it, just those after half time, the 23 goals to 3. No other teams at the moment, but it's very rare, are kicking scores like that. And other teams are playing North Melbourne, other teams are playing Adelaide, and they're certainly not getting those big scores, and certainly not within a half of football. So it is very impressive. I mean, a lot of games there's 30 points, 40 points scored, and these teams are playing some of those bottom teams, and they're not getting scores like that. So it is something. There's something to that, and as you said, we'll see in the next 2 weeks if we can back that up against some opposition that's around about the same level as us. Big Man, anything you want to add to that?
Just that the opposite. I think actually the most impressive thing for me is not how many goals we're scoring in the second half in the last 3 weeks, is how few goals the opposition are scoring. 3 goals in 3 games of football, goal each, the Crows, Roos and Collingwood. In 3 goals against an AFL team in a half of football is remarkable. Now, sure, the Crows and they were 12 points, only 12 points down at three-quarter time. The Roos were, they're not a strong side at the moment either. But as I mentioned before, the Pies had 16 inside 50s to 9 in the third quarter and came out and threw everything they had at the game. To keep Collingwood to only 1 goal and a half of footy is remarkable, I think. And 3 goals, as I say, in 3 weeks in second half of AFL football. And as you say, Andy, I mean, the West Coast played Hawks. The Hawks were pretty average in that game. I watched that game, and leak goals against the Hawks, and similarly the Saints still leaked some goals against an even more woeful Essendon. So it's no easy feat to keep an AFL side to 1 goal. Doesn't matter where they are on the ladder. And as I say, Collingwood are, even though they had a lot of their stars out, they still worked hard in that game. So defensively, we're just becoming incredibly hard to score on.
Go ahead.
It could ruin our MFCSS as well. If they keep doing this, we won't be worried about whether we're going to win the game in the last quarter.
Oh, no, it's still there. It's still firmly there. I'm still biting my nails.
Even when we're 15 goals there.
Yes.
in 3 games.
It's still there. It's not going away. It's been too long. It's ingrained in me. It's always going to be there. A nice change this week. There were 2 nice changes. Goal kicking accuracy, 16 goals, 4 behinds. I don't have any stats in front of me, but I can't remember the last time we were so accurate. Inaccuracy has been sort of a part of our game over the last couple of years. So I don't know. Do either of you know when the last time we were so accurate was? George, you?
Not me. More importantly, I think about the goal kicking accuracy is, particularly in this game, was we did it early on. There's nothing like scoreboard pressure, particularly in a side like Collingwood, who were, are potentially finalists. They're trying their damned hardest to win the game, but it makes it really hard for the opposition and demoralising for them when you just kick goal after goal after goal and they can't do anything about it. So, it's a big change. I can't remember the last time we kicked so accurately. Wiedemann's got fantastic goal kicking style, and the others just kept nailing them. And when Spargo comes in and kicks 3 goals in 10 minutes, that was the whole game. So let there be more of it.
And it doesn't, you're spot on, George, that kicking those goals early is just so critical. When Wiedemann, he was dead in front, but you're still worried about him missing it. And it was, you get the reward for your effort. You're away, and that comes back to what I was saying about how stingy they are and how effective their defensive is. If we get 3 goals up on a team, that's a pretty hard bridge for teams to cross in terms of getting that back, because we don't give up 2 or 3 goals very easily anymore. And so if you can put the scoreboard pressure on you 3-1 instead of 1-3 or 1-4, you go a long way to win those games of football.
Mm.
I just had a look at our stats from last year. In round 3 against Essendon, we kicked 18 goals for, but we did lose the game. So that straight kicking didn't help us then. But yeah, umpiring. I've whinged on this show the past 2 weeks about the lopsided umpiring. I'm not whinging this week. I think it was 14-7 to us at half-time, but the umps put the whistle away in the second half, and it ended up being 21-15 at the end in our favour. I'll take that any day of the week. Yeah, well, what wasn't upset about the umpiring this week?
We got some pretty
we did.
good decisions went our way, didn't we? It was really nice to see. I was furious about the umpiring not. It was like the game was a whole different kettle of fish when you're getting free kicks, and I love them talking about the one that Petrarca didn't get pinged on. It definitely was a free kick. I mean, I don't know what they're doing with the holding the ball. It's like a dog's breakfast, isn't it? But it was terrific because it went. There was some fancy work, I think, with Langdon again, and maybe with Jones on the boundary line, and it got down deep, and that really they were pushing at that stage too, and we're going to move forward with that. Obviously, if they'd been paid dropping the ball dead on the wing, so that was a handy one.
Before we move on to the next, do you boys have anything else you want to bring up? I think, B-Man, you wanted to talk about our game plans.
Yeah, just quickly, I won't belabor the point, but a while ago, Engorged Onion posted a really interesting article on Demonland from The Guardian about the EPL and the tactics in the EPL, and in particular the tactics of Liverpool and Klopp. And whether they had any relevance for the Goody in particular, and also the AFL. And I thought I read the article, and it really sort of stuck with me. And my response to the post was, I agree with Engorged Onion's view that it does have some relevance. And one of the quotes that jumped out was, at the elite level, two attributes separate the very best managers from the rest: their capacity to manage the transition from attack to defence, and their ability to organise an attack, particularly against deep-lying opponents. That's talking about soccer, but it's completely relevant for AFL, and the deep-lying opponents in our game are those the swamp of people in your back half when you've got the zones and you've got your all-team defence pushing back. We've got, as I was just noting, we've got incredibly effective at our all-team defence. So we've got the first part of that nailed. From there, when we're attacking, defending backwards, we are just probably equal to any team in the competition at doing that. The other team that's generally been really good at that is Collingwood, of course. But the other part of that equation is being able to score goals. And they talk in the article about Klopp and Man City having automated goals. Talk about the ability to organise attack with pre-automated kicks. And I think we're doing that, where they pre-practice moves that are drilled so they can be deployed when the circumstances are right, and say that that's just the difference between the elite teams and the ones who can't quite make that next level, are the ability to score with those moves. And I think Goodwin's doing that. There was an example where Spargo kicked that goal to Brayshaw. If you look at that, he just turns and goes straight to that spot. And I'm convinced that that's an automated drill. Now, you could say that's a team rule, but I think it's more complex than that. Later in the game, he kicks to exactly that same spot to a Collingwood player, and that was, in fact, the only goal we gave up in that third quarter in the second half. But there wasn't a Melbourne player there. And my point is that I think that Goodwin's drilling them in, and the reason we were so effective, you mentioned our defence, but I think in fact, it was our attack, and it was those pre-automated moves that were the big difference. We were just lethal on them, and I think that was helped by the fact that their defence was all over the seat. They had, lots of players in who weren't normally in that team. So just something to watch out for, and I wonder whether it's a new thing in football. As I say, it's a little bit more complex, I think, than just kicking to the hot spot or team rule that you go in board, and it goes to the point about the accuracy, because if you look where all of our kicks are, they're from the corridor, as I've been talking about for a few weeks, and that's because they cut back inside with that, where I think is an automated trigger kick. So, just something to watch out for, I think.
George, does that sound right to you? So for me, it's all a bit complex, but how about you? What do you say?
I think it's still too difficult to pick up sufficient amount of information from the television to know exactly what's going on. What I have noticed is, and all game plans are at the end of the day, a plan that you have for your particular opponent on the way to beat them, and how you utilise. It might be set plays, it might be the way that you transition the ball, it might be who you play through, it might be which opposition players you attack, which ones you don't worry about. But I think we're actually starting to formulate some really serious plans in the last couple of weeks on the game. While it's against teams which are lower on the ladder, they virtually haven't been able to switch the ball, which I think is a big change that I've noticed from earlier in the season. So there's obviously a lot of work going into that zone defence across the whole ground. I noticed, for example, in this game, we didn't care where Pendlebury was in the middle. He was almost left unattended. Now that means that you've either worked out that Pendlebury's not up to scratch, given the 4-day break, or you've said, no, Petrarca's going to beat him in any case in most situations, so we'll just let him do his bit. And don't worry about what Pendlebury does. All these little things are about the planning that's gone in beforehand, and I think we're capable of, we have been doing a lot more of that, simply because we haven't had the injuries and we've got the same players effectively, maybe one or two changes here and there, turning up every week, and that enables you to enact a game plan that works for the type of players that you've got on the field. If you're constantly changing and you haven't got the cattle that were there last week, it makes it very difficult to implement any sort of game plan. So there's a whole stack of things I think are coming together, but the set plays are certainly part of the repertoire, and I suspect you might be right about where Spargo knows where he's going to kick before he even gets the ball.
I think it also depends on your opposition, how much pressure they're applying on you, and who's controlling the game as well. If you can't control that game and control that ball, then any tactics that you have can get thrown out the window pretty quickly.
Yeah. But also, too, when you could see that their defence, their back six hadn't played together that much, and Dunn played all right. He looks like he's been in the same pie shop as me.
Yeah, he does.
But you could see when a team back six doesn't have synergy, then suddenly whether they're preordained moves triggered from automated or whatever the case may be, a few times, or at least one of them was a classic example, that kick deep to McDonald from Bruce. They were completely lost on that play, and that was a terrible bit of defence. If it had been us giving that goal up, you'd be furious. But that was all about them not knowing where each other were in the mix. And I think footy's become, I'm so looking forward to seeing a game next season live, because it's become such a moving chess, I should say, in terms of where people are moving on the ground, that it must be a pretty complex game to play.
Yes, let's move on. We had a scratch match before the game this week. We ran away convincing winners against Collingwood by 39 points. I'm not sure what the numbers were, whether it was 14 on 14, 16 on 16, but I imagine something like that. Neil Bullen was playing despite he's still got 2 matches to serve. He was best of field playing up forward. I think what was interesting was Toby Bedford kicked 4 goals. He must be sort of knocking on the door. So if they're going to give Cozzy a rest, I would say that Bedford's going to be the one to come in, and if Cozzy does have a rest, I wouldn't mind that. Let's see what Toby can offer. The article said our defence stood strong throughout the game. Trent Rivers enjoyed some time up the ground, impressing with a run on the ball, which is nice to see. Oscar Baker shone as his pace shone on the wing. Corey Wagner was back, played in the middle. He's had a broken wrist. Jaden Hunt didn't play because he was the carryover emergency, and apparently no mention was made of Mitch Brown, Bennell or Hannon.
Or Omac.
Oh, for you, yes. So that's what happened in the twos. Changes for this week, Big Man. What do we do with Gawn? It's an interesting one. First of all, a lot of people are saying he's got the PCL, and they're saying a light PCL is 3 to 4 weeks. What's he missed? He's missed 2, but the PCL you can also miss 8 to 10 weeks. So it doesn't sound like he's got sort of that type of injury, but do we risk him going into this week? Particularly because their ruckman may or may not be playing. Some of the reports sound like he might, but I'm happy for him to go in with a bit of a dodgy ankle. What are your thoughts on whether we risk Gawn or not?
I'm totally with George. I wouldn't risk him at all this week, and even if he was right to go, and it would be worth thinking about giving him another week just to be 100%. I mean, he had that back injury, his lat injury, sounds like a muscle strain of some sort. So, you give him another week, he's got a full week to the St Kilda game, or I think. Yep, a full week to the St Kilda game. Yeah. So why not give him that space? And English. Totally agree with what George said. English is going to be a star. He's a fantastic footballer, but he's a kid. And Bruce will be physically into him all game. He's not. I can't see English cutting this apart like, say, a really fit Grundy might do to Bruce. But the big one is the following week. I rate Marshall. Marshall's a fantastic footballer, and Paddy Ryder's in probably perhaps career best form. So. That'll be really interesting the following week. I'd love to, for them to consider resting Maxi even if he's good to go, and so he's cherry ripe for the Saints game in the hours.
The only thing with Bruce, it could be. I'm worried about that cramping at the end of the game. Not that he won't, but I'm just worried that he might not be fit this week. That's my concern. So if that was the case, and this is where I'm not basing this on anything, would you go in with? Would you play Max if we didn't have Bruce there, or would you just go in with the having T-Mac and perhaps Tomlinson or Weed chopping out in the ruck for the entire game? Could we afford to do that?
We could have. I wouldn't want them to. I mean, no, you'd want your best ruckman in, wouldn't you? So yeah. Bruce will be fine. 7-day break from cramp. I can't. That's the great thing about having 7 days for this. They've only got 6 days. That's the other thing that's helpful for us. And then I think the following week, Saints have also only got a 6-day break. So I reckon if he's 75% fit, they'll play Prusy, but hopefully not Maxi unless he's cherry, right?
George, any other changes you'd look at making?
I don't think they gave us much opportunity to look at too many others. I don't think there's any pressing needs from beneath unless they want to rest a particular player. They keep talking about James Jordan coming into the side at some stage. I don't know when the opportunity will present itself. Sparrow has guaranteed himself a couple more games, I would have thought, so I don't know that he'll be left out. Lockhart's just come back and he's cemented his place pretty effectively in the back line, so there's really not any changes, short of a training mishap or someone who they choose to rest for a particular reason. But the beauty is, and again, we come back to the fitness and the injury situation. We've got a lot of players pushing up for roles in the senior side, and we're in a very fortunate position this year, which is a complete contrast to last year. So apart from the potential Gawn Bruce situation, I can't see too many others that would be warranted at this stage.
And
what about Jones, George?
Jonesy, again, I think people don't realise how much work Jones does. You remember the Langdon running down the line of the boundary line. The other person who was doing all the hard work on the inside was Jones. The number of times he just seems to tackle, the number of times he seems to just shrug off an opposition player when he should be brought to ground. His strength and his ability to keep playing in tight situations is still good. I don't see any reason for him not. He's not what he used to be by any stretch. But who's going to replace him? Short of one of the younger players like a James Jordan, and I wouldn't be bringing Jordan in against a team like Footscray. They've got 4 seriously good midfielders as well, and we need all the strength that we can have around the ground as well to combat that. I'd be keeping Jonesy in, definitely for this week.
Bulldogs looked
It's interesting because with how many games we got left? Is it 6, including the Essendon game?
Yeah.
We're starting to get to the stage with, I wouldn't
11, 7, 8,
think they'd be thinking about resting Cozzy, for instance, because he's not playing particularly physically taxing role. I mean, apart from the contact, obviously, but aerobically he looks pretty fit, and he's a forward who pushes up. But you're starting to get into that zone where you don't really want to chop and change with 3-4 games to go before finals. If we're in a position to be making finals, you want to, as noted before, you want to keep your unit together, playing together, and everyone knowing their role and doing their job. So, it was interesting, vandenBerg talking about Josh Wagner, thinking, he's a forgotten footballer. It was interesting he chose him when you asked Andy about who would be a smoky, how it would be a smoky, but it just goes to George's point about, a team full of fit players just desperate to get into this team.
Mark Stevens on Twitter says that Crozier looks set to return. Bruce, a lock. Johannesson and Vandermeer also right to go. And you said English now looks better than a 50% chance to play. So they've got a few important names looking set to return. The Josh Bruce, even though he's been out of form this year, he's always worried me when he was playing at the Saints. Always bobbed up for a couple of goals. I think he's kicked multiple ones on occasions, 3s and 4s. Always seems to worry us. So he just worries me
last week.
Sorry.
Was he dropped last week or injured, or what was his?
He was dropped.
Yeah, he was dropped last week. He has been horrible this year. The few games that I've watched him, he's just been horrible. He doesn't know where to go, where to run, and he's a player who depends on the lead to get his possessions. He just doesn't fit. He doesn't fit into the way that the Bulldogs play a forward line. So I think he's all at sea, and he just doesn't look like he's interested in the game. So that'll guarantee if he comes back, he'll kick 5 goals.
Exactly. That's the MFC.
So why is Stephen saying he's a lock to come back in?
Yeah. But what he's basing that on, I don't know. But yeah, as George, there's your MFCSS for the week, because that's exactly what I'm thinking.
We've seen him do exactly that in too many games when he was at St Kilda.
They have got a genuine star up forward. Norton is, I think, the real deal. He's a fantastic footballer, and I assume they'll put May on him just because, well, that's how highly I rate Norton in terms of you put your best defender on him, I would have thought. But he's pretty quick, Norton. So May's pretty quick too. Do you see him shut down near the end of the game? Elliott on the lead.
Yeah,
not many fullbacks his size could run, spoil that. That was a 30-metre run to spoil to track Elliott. So I think he'll go to Norton, and but he's a serious footballer, Norton.
Yep. Before we end up, we can talk about they've released the final pieces to the puzzle of this draw this year. We knew that we were playing last week. We knew we were playing St Kilda in in the Northern Territory. But now we've got, after that, we've got Sydney off Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So we've got a 5-day, or just under a 5-day break in Cairns. And then what have we got? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We've got the 4-day break before we have to play Freo also in Cairns. I'm assuming we will have a mini hub in Cairns. You wouldn't think we'd be flying in and out, but I'm not sure on that. Do either of you guys have any intel on that?
You definitely fly in, fly out. But definitely in the sense that I read it on AFL.com.
Okay.
That's the main.
There's no mini hub. There's no hub up there, is what you're saying.
Not for us. There is for the Swans and who's the other? Freo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the Swans game, they play Port, same break as us, but they're in Adelaide, so we fly to Cairns from our base at Maroochydore or wherever up to Cairns, and they have to hightail it back from Port, and hopefully Port will give them a good smashing. So it's a pretty compressed, those last few games, but I had a look, and it's a pretty good stretch of games for us in terms of the opposition's rest. We either have equal or better gap between games and better travel. So it's a pretty good finish to the season for the D's.
And then after that, we've got Giants at the Gabba and Essendon in the last round. I'm assuming it'll probably be at the Gabba, but could be a Metricon. So, they'll probably leave that one maybe to the last. Well, maybe not, because I think Essendon might be well and truly out of it by then.
Which is another benefit, because if we'd played them earlier, I mean, we were in terrible form early in the season. If we'd played them in that round, they would have had a better chance, I would have thought, than they are. They're terrible at the moment. They just, speaking of ball movement, they don't look like they can move the ball forward at all, even, if they're invited to. So if they've got presumably they'll be out of finals contention in that game, so there won't be the heat on it, and who knows, they might be playing for draft position. Freo by that stage too will probably likely be out of contention as well. So those last couple of games will be against two teams out of contention, hopefully.
If GWS continue the way they've been playing, they might be out of contention as well by round 17. So you never know.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. I watched the Essendon game last week as well, and they were just horrible. And the other thing that I don't think Essendon has got the slightest bit of hope of getting through to the finals. I think they're going to play West Coast, Richmond, and one other team, I think, that's already in the 8. I can't remember which one. So it's unlikely that they're going to get sufficient games to get ahead of us, certainly. The Swans, I think, have put the queue in the rack. I see Rampy's out for the rest of the season. There was someone else. Franklin hasn't played, of course, this year. So, given that they've got no chance of making the finals, I don't think they'll force him back for some games towards the end of the season. So you could think that there wouldn't be much opposition coming from those games, but still, we've got to put ourselves in the position in the next 2 to be able to guarantee our spot, because GWS can still overtake us quite easily. Although they didn't play well at all last week, but the best we can do is make sure that nobody can jump us, and that's what we're going to do this week and the following week, to ensure that we're in there. And if we were to continue winning and playing the same way that we have been, then we can start to look actually at some further progression up the ladder, because other teams will start playing each other. So
and that's where too the three games in a row winning by 50 odd points, our percentage went from, am I right to think it was 85 or 90?
It was 88, and then
88%. It's now 118.2 compared to the Bulldogs on 97.9, same points, but we've got the game in hand. That's a pretty big advantage. I mean, this is a huge game for the Dogs, and so I'm a bit wary of this game, more so than the Pies actually. But that's a very, very good position for us percentage-wise. The 118, given how many games, we've won the 6 games, that's a pretty impressive percentage.
Yeah, for sure. The next 2 weeks extremely important. If we can bank those 2 wins, we're in very good position. So let's hope so. Anything else, boys? Before we wrap things up here.
I just wondered whether our luck has finally changed in the games. You remember the Melcham soccer goal that he got off Tommy Mack's hands?
Yep.
The only Melbourne player that got hands that could land in were Melcham's, and that did. And then Spargo, danced through 5 Collingwood defenders to kick his goal, and you go, well, the ball fell into his hands as well. And Wiedemann's mark on the goal line from Melcham's kick from the boundary. If it had been a little bit more or a little bit less, it probably wouldn't have been a goal. Just when Collingwood were thinking of coming back, it started to pour down rain in the third term. So maybe our luck has finally changed, which would be a nice situation going into the next round.
Certainly.
And add one to that, George. It was just a fantastic bit of play. 3 contested marks with the rain coming down in that third quarter.
Yeah.
I think Fritsch was one of them that it ended up with. Perhaps I'm confusing these golfs, but the mark to Petrarca in the pocket that it was Moore was on him was just a fantastic mark. It was wet, slippery. He protected the ball, the drop with his body running full tilt, and then slotted it from the boundary. Thought, well, it's definitely our night when that sort of thing's happening.
It's a good thing. Yeah. It's a good thing when luck is shining down on us. That's for sure.
There was one more thing, Andy, if you've got a moment.
Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, I just encourage people. We had the guys from the debrief on a couple of weeks ago talking about the merger. The final episode was produced today. So I'd encourage people to go and listen to that. There was some interesting insights, particularly from the Hawthorn side of things. Certainly things that I didn't know were going on in the background. There were some even more interesting things on the Melbourne side that I didn't know were going on. While a few of these things might have been unsubstantiated, they're interesting stories in themselves. And the other thing I'd encourage people to listen to is on the Melbourne Footy Club website, Todd Patterson's, who's the AFLW list manager, talking about our strategy going into the draft period and trade period for this year, particularly with the 6 players who've left the club and why they've left, and also why we really pushed for the draft selections this year. So some good, interesting listening there if people want to take up the offers.
All right, everyone should get on board and do that. All right, I think we'll end it there, boys. It's been a good one. Let's hope we can get a couple of wins in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be back next week, hopefully to discuss one of those wins. Thank you to Aaron vandenBerg, thank you to B-Man, and thank you, George. We'll see you next week. Go D's.
Go Redland.
Come on, Demon. Come on, Demon.